sit up here with my husband.
And I too can't say enough about Arkansas Support Network. In our clinic, we try to really work with families. I always say it takes a village to work with these children. And a lot of times I will get stumped on, trying to get some help through the school, trying to get help through the community. And I have Arkansas Support Network programmed in my phone, and I hand out their number at least on a weekly basis, if not more often than that.
That's why we get all those calls.
Probably. Probably. I'm single-handedly keeping you guys busy.
Awesome.
But anyway, my name is Melissa Foster. I work with Jarvis Pediatric Therapy. I'm an occupational therapist. Working with probably 90% of the children we see there are kids on the autism spectrum, Asperger's, ADHD, more of the sensory mental health disabilities, and we see some kids with various physical disabilities, but we tend to focus more on behavior and sensory kids. And so a lot of times, probably the number one question I get asked by parents is it sensory or is it behavior? So I'm going to try to help tweak that. Now, it does not say MD on those initials. It doesn't say doctor behind my name. It says OTRL behind my name. So we're looking more at the symptoms and behaviors of specific actions rather than a diagnosis here. So what do I mean by when I say, is it sensory? Well, that's referring to sensory processing disorder. It's commonly seen in autism, Asperger's, ADHD, OCD, anxiety. You see it a lot with cerebral palsy, and a variety of mental health conditions can have symptoms of sensory processing disorder. And the treatment for sensory processing disorder, I try to put in lots of pictures. Colorful.
That's Wendy, isn't it?
Yep, that's Wendy and little Mackenzie. They're swinging on the swing. So sensory integration therapy is the primary treatment for sensory processing disorder. And sensory integration therapy uses various sensory inputs to create an optimal level of arousal as needed to maximize learning experiences and improve overall health. And backing up a little bit, you will see it labeled as sensory processing disorder, as well as sensory integration dysfunction. Same thing. As with all mental health things, they like to change the name every 5-10 years, it seems like. So I'm told by the powers that be that sensory processing disorder is the new term. So, but they're the same thing. You see both. So what did that definition just mean? Because that's a big, long, fancy words. So we all learned about the 5 basic senses in kindergarten, right? Sight, smell, touch, hearing, taste. Plus there's 2 other senses. The vestibular sense, the body's relationship to the Earth's gravitational pull. That's your organ for that's in your inner ear. So that's like going on roller coasters. That's kids who spin. That kid who's taking a flying leap and swinging on that swing, he's working on his vestibular system. You also have proprioceptive input, and it's the body's relationship to itself. For example, if you close your eyes, I know I'm standing straight up because my body's telling me that. A common thing you'll see with people who've had a stroke, a common test they give is they'll have them close their eyes, and the therapist will put their arm here, and they'll see if the patient can match it. And a lot of times they'll be here, they'll be here. So that's knowing where your body is in space without the use of sight. And if you don't know where your body is, you're clumsy and falling all over the place, you're falling out of your chair, doing all kinds of stuff like that. So the purpose of sensory integration therapy. A lot of our kids are sensory seeking, especially of that proprioceptive and vestibular input. So those are the kids who are always on the go. They're crashing into everything. They're wondering why I can't ride my bike down the stairs. And when mom tries to take them to the hospital and they bust their head open, they throw a fit because they want to keep riding their bike down the stairs. So a lot of our children will have unsafe sensory seeking behaviors. So they will always have those sensory seeking behaviors. We just want to modify it into a more safe manner. For example, jumping onto our swing, that's a safe thing to do. Being a runner, jumping on a mini trampoline, riding your bike, not down the stairs, but riding your bike with the helmet on the sidewalk. Those are ways to get that sensory input they need in a safe manner. because we don't provide it in a safe manner, these kids get creative and find their own way. As well as decrease sensory sensitivities through gentle and repetitive exposure. So I'm not going to take a kid who's vestibular insecure, remember that's that roller coaster sense, and take them and go, wee, you have problems with vestibular input, I'm going to throw you up in the air and you're going to get used to it. No, we're going to take them on like that little square swing you saw them right at the beginning, and we're just going to move it an inch or two. We're just going to very gently, maybe the swing, because we can move it up and down, it's only this far off the ground and we're just moving it an inch or two, and we're doing that for a minute. You know, a lot of kids are very vestibular insecure. If I have a child, a common insecurity is tactile defensiveness. Kids who don't like the texture of their clothing, they don't like to wear jeans, they don't like their hair cut, their nails cut, they don't like their hair washed, they don't like their hands washed, they don't like anything touching their body. Welcome. Let's some handouts. Here we go. Welcome. So we do a lot of very gentle exposure to various tactile inputs. For example, the sandbox, the beans and rice. We have a pool of dried beans and rice. Different textures on their skin. We do water weeks all summer long, where we get exposure to water, and a lot of times it's so much fun, and we try to make it such good play. You know, there's Thomas trains in the sandbox, and I hate the texture of sand, but there's Thomas trains in there. So again, very gentle, playful, loving exposure to help decrease the sensitivities. So is it sensory or is it behavior? For every negative reaction, there is usually a sensory and a behavior component. So I had several people say, oh, my friend really wanted to come to the talk. I had like 2 or 3 people say this. My friend really wanted to come to this talk because they're having some problem with their kid, and the kid may or may not have some diagnosis, and they want to know if the problem is a sensory problem or a behavior problem. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's both. So there's your answer. And there is no clear-cut explanation of is it always sensory or is it always behavior. There's no way to give you that answer. So sorry for all of you who came here for that reason. I know. If I had magic fairy dust and magic pills and a magic book, I would be a gazillionaire and wouldn't be working for a living. I'd just be doing this for fun. So for example, the holidays are coming up. Everyone is going to be sensory overloaded. There's going to be the smells. There's going to be new clothing that you have to wear. You know, those kids who always wear sweatpants and suddenly mom wants them to wear starched slacks and a button-up collared shirt. There's yes, plus the tag and the collar. I know my son this past Christmas wore his first button-up shirt, and he did fine with it. I think it's more me just anticipating sensory issues, automatically weeding them out. But then you also have like grandma who has a lot of perfume on, trying to give them a hug. So there's a lot of sensory overload, so you're going to have more meltdowns. Mom and dad are going to have more meltdowns, and the kids are going to have more meltdowns. Plus there's social demands, there's a change in routine, all of that. So if you didn't know it already, you're going to have more meltdowns on Christmas, Hanukkah, Thanksgiving, New Year's, all the holidays that are coming up. On the reverse, take a long car trip. You're sitting in the car for 14 hours. You're sitting there. You're not moving your body. You're just sitting there. You're going to be extra cranky. Both situations cause a sensory imbalance and crankiness. So again, the goal of sensory integration therapy, which you don't need a therapist for, you can do a lot of this stuff at home. I'm going to give you lots of tips, is to balance it out between the sensory overload and the sensory under-registration to keep the kid and the adults in the middle ground so that everyone can be happiest and on their optimal behavior and best able to function. So when you're looking at is it sensory or behavior, you usually want a combination of being a sensory detective, so looking at, for example, the holiday, looking at we're going to be going to Christmas Eve Mass, looking at we're going to go to this aunt's house who they don't know for Thanksgiving. So you want to kind of be able to scan the environment and look for sensory reasons that the child may be defensive and may cause meltdowns. And basic behavior modification techniques usually works best. For example, a big problem for a lot of children is the lunchroom. You know, I usually hear, Johnny's getting in trouble at school. Where is it? I bet it's either recess, PE, or lunchroom. 90% of the time it's one of those three. So let's say, for example, the lunchroom. So I'm going to be my sensory detective here. The lunchroom, it's usually a big auditorium kind of building, big cafeteria room. So you have echoing sounds, which are going to make the kid more defensive. If you have a food-sensitive child, whether they're eating their own lunch or other, the cafeteria food, there's going to be the food issue that what are people going to make me eat? What are people around me eating? Are they going to even offer me a food that I don't want to eat? There's that social issue. There's the smells. I mean, cafeterias, even if the food is good, all the mingling of the smells really gets pretty disgusting. And then there's the social demands. So again, that's being a sensory detective and seeing what is the problem here. There's also behavior modification techniques, to look at. Is the kid just going crazy? Can we set some clear boundaries of, you sit at this spot all the time, you sit by this buddy all the time, and work on some behavior modification techniques. So when you're trying to figure out if your child is has more sensory issues, or is it just not my idea syndrome, here's some hallmarks for a behavior. We always giggle in the clinic. If a child turns it on and off like a switch, it's behavior. So if a kid is throwing a fit because they're on the swing and they're crying, and with behavior, there's usually no tears. So if I'm asking a kid, say, I don't know this kid very well, and I'm trying to evaluate them. And so I usually put them on different pieces of equipment and see how they react. So let's say I take little Johnny and I get him on the swing with me, and I'm sitting with him on the swing, and I'm swinging with him. We usually start out very gently. And he's screaming and trying to get away. First of all, I look if there's tears. If there's no tears, it's behavior, usually. And if the second I put him down, if he's like, oh, no, I'm off into the bean and rice pool, that's what I wanted to do, was the bean and rice pool, that leads me to think that it was behavior. Behavior usually responds well to tough love. I stress the love part because I tend to be very tough on the children I work with and my own biological children, but also with lots of love so that they know. I read in a book once that the kids need 10 phrases for every correction. And I strongly believe in that. So I get a lot of structure, a lot of I said yes, I mean yes, and so I'm not backing down. And then sometimes you're even like, but why did I say that you needed to do that? Because it really wasn't that big of a deal. That consistency. Lots of structure and clear boundaries tends to work best for kids who we think it's a behavior reaction. When it's a sensory reaction, come on down. Now you guys are fine. Grab some handouts.
Just have to share lots of
So when you're looking at a sensory reaction, take the holidays that are coming up, take Thanksgiving. If you have a kid who's melting down and they're going crazy and they're screaming for, let's say they want to go watch Thomas in the next room. Okay, so they don't like what's going on. It's not my idea. I'm screaming. They want me to sit at the dinner table and I don't want to, and they're throwing a tantrum. If you take them into the next room and you turn on the Thomas the Tank Engine, y'all all know Thomas the Tank Engine, okay? What sensory kid is not obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine? Or at least the littler ones. If you give them what they want, they don't calm down immediately. So they may calm down somewhat, so you remove them from that situation, and these kids are usually very smart, and they're like throwing a fit because they want to go see Thomas. And a lot of times that's an escape mechanism because they're in overload. So you take them in the next room, and you turn on the Thomas television, and you can still see they're upset. They're trying to calm themselves down, but they're still upset. That's a kid who is in sensory overload. If you give them what they want, and sometimes they're like, I don't know, and they don't even know what they want anymore. They're so spiraled out of control. That's more likely a kid who freaked out for a sensory reaction. And a lot of times you have to keep going backwards in hindsight and going, okay, well, why did they freak out? They had a major meltdown at Walmart. Why was that? And, you know, if the second you take them out of Walmart, they stop crying, well, then you know it was behavior. But if you get them out to the car and you turn on their favorite music or the TV in the car, and they're still having a hard time calming down, then that tells you that Walmart, they're having sensory problems at Walmart. It's not just, oh, I wanted to go to the park instead of Walmart. Any questions on that? I feel like I'm being a little confusing here. Okay. So, again, if you turn it on and off like a switch, it's behavior. If it takes you a while to calm down, it's more of a sensory reaction, and that's when you want to get in on your sensory hat and try to figure out what was the switch. Sensory reactions respond well to some flexibility for the sensory. For example, hoods are not allowed at school a lot of times, but a lot of my kids with auditory defensiveness will wear their hoods on their hoodies at school. So again, that's some minor flexibility within the confines of you still got to go eat lunch with class, but we're going to let you have your hood up. So they respond well to some flexibility for sensory situation within clear boundaries, routine, and structure. Kids with sensory processing problems tend to be very controlling because their world is crazy and they don't know how to make sense of it. So they're not bad, they're not manipulative, they're not evil. They are trying to make the best out of their world. And the more structure and routine that we can provide them, the happier they are. And then even if we can tell them, hey, it's Thanksgiving, so we're not going to go to school on a Thursday, we're going to go eat lunch at Grandma's house, the more you can prepare and talk to them and read stories about it and prepare them, that helps them get ready for it. If a kid is having sensory problems, behavior modification alone is useless. I don't know how many times a kid has come into the clinic and said, well, so-and-so in our family thinks if we just spank them enough, they'll get better. I see that over and over and over again. Again, I'm a tough love therapist. A lot of the sensory stuff sounds like, oh, lovey-dovey, hocus-pocus kind of stuff. And I do love every single patient I work with. But unless you understand the reasons behind those negative actions and can modify the sensory a little bit, all the modification, behavior modification in the world will be useless. For example, this is how they see the world a lot of times. Let's say I brought in 10 lions into this room. And I said, the rule is you must sit in your chair. And if you get up out of your chair, I will give you a spanking, or I will take away TV for the night. The lions are scary. They're real. They're scary. I'm getting up and I'm walking out the door, running out the door, or carefully backing out the door, or whatever. But I'm not going to listen to boss because I see a lion and the lion is scary. That's how they see, that's how they perceive the touch that is obnoxious to them. That's how they perceive the sounds that are obnoxious to them. Those are two common ones that sets them off. So, again, all the behavior modification in the world would not keep you in a room full of lions, and they are truly scared of those, what they perceive as lions. So, again, it takes a lot of figuring out what their lions are, as well as finding a way to make the lions less scary. You know, maybe it turns into just a really scary cat instead of a lion. Well, maybe I could stand in a room with a wild cat, but I can't stay in the room with a lion, kind of deal. So again, behavior modification alone, if we're dealing with sensory issues, is useless. Behavior tricks. So again, I figure a big reason why a lot of y'all are here is because I want help. So I try to give you guys my #1 helps that I tell people about and that I use with my own children. My own biological children and my own patient children. I always have to distinguish between the two because I call them all my children. So clearly defined rules, expectations, and boundaries. You know, when the kids come into the clinic, they always take their shoes and socks off. They always wash their hands. They almost always start with the ball pit. That routine, very predictable. We walk through the door. You know, shoes, socks, we'll go wash hands every time. And at the end of the session, it's shoes, socks, treasure box. Go get the treasure box. So again, rules, expectations, boundaries. You know, if they have to clean off the table today they need to clean off the table. Tomorrow they need to clean off the table every day. If we always brush our teeth at night, that helps. You know, my son has sensory problems, and we always take a bath at night. Now, do all kids always need a bath every night? Absolutely not, but especially when he was younger and more routine-driven and more prone to tantrums, we took a bath every night. Even if it was 9 o'clock at night and bedtime's 8, we still took a quick bath, because if I didn't take that bath, then it'd be midnight before we got to bed. That routine of we take a bath, we brush our teeth, we put our pajamas on, we watch one show, we read books, we go to bed. The more routine you can put in these kids' life, the happier they will be. Consistent rewards and reasonable consequences, all clearly and simply defined ahead of time. I won't tell what family members I'm telling on. But, you know, I see this all the time. I'm from a big Catholic family, so I see lots of cousins, so y'all don't know who I'm telling on. But the kid just gets annoying, and then all of a sudden they're in timeout. There wasn't if you do X one more time, you're going to timeout. If you do Y one more time, you lose that toy. They need that very clear warning of, if you do this one more time, we're done. And not just, I find myself giving this sometimes myself, you're in big trouble, because I've not thought of what the real consequence is. But if you can think of what the real consequence is and then follow through, it definitely helps. Again, give one warning with the stated consequence, and then actually follow through with the stated consequence as needed. And you will find at times, I know I've done this myself, when you're like, if that wasn't such a big deal, why did I ask them to put their shoes away? It would have been so much easier if I'd taken the 10 seconds and done it myself, but now we have a 2-hour screaming fit over shoes? Really? But the more you can follow through and be consistent, yes always means yes, and no always means no. There are no maybes. That helps. Another one, I don't think I put it in here, but something that works really well with my son too is, again, I'm a tough love therapist. And Mama, I almost never tell him or any of the other kids no. I say, of course you can, when yada yada. Mom, I don't want to go to school today. I want to go to Silver Dollar City. Of course we can go to Silver Dollar City. We're going to go next month. You know, but I want to have a cookie. Of course you can. After your dinner, you can have one. You know, but I want to do this. Of course you can, when this whatever is met. I almost never find a situation where, can I do this, or can I have that, or I want to do this. It's almost never no. Maybe my kid just gives me, and the kids in the clinic give me reasonable requests. You know, even if it's the end of the session and they say, but I wanted to play in the ball pit. I say, of course we can. Let's put it on our list first next time. You know, so again, I'm telling them no, but I'm not using the N-O word. Because a lot of kids, you just say N-O, and they automatically freak out at you. I don't think I put that one there. Sensory tricks. Provide sensory input at regular intervals, at least every 2 hours. So, for example, take the long road trip. My family drives to Gulf Shores almost every summer. That's like a 14-hour drive with a whole bunch of young kids when you get extended family. We're in the McDonald's parking lot running laps, and I don't care how silly it looks, because I don't know these people. They're never going to see me again. So we really want the sensory breaks at least every 2 hours. I write in a lot of the kids I work with in their IEP plans to do it every hour. And this doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to take money, really much time. Some of my favorite ones are, just go take this note to the office. Do any of the other kids know that that kid's taking a sensory break? No, but just that walking away from the classroom, getting that physical activity, walking to the office helps. They can also go to the nurse's station, do push-ups, sit-ups. I've had kids where they put a mini trampoline, which is my favorite therapy tool, in the nurse's office, and they would go take breaks and go jump on the mini trampoline. And this was like a middle school kid, like in football and regular thing, you know, normal, great kid. But he needed that. He said he couldn't concentrate in math unless he jumped on the trampoline before he had his math class. He had that kind of great self-awareness. I love positive timeouts in a calm place. So, and the greatest place I like is a coat closet or any kind of closet. And most of you probably have a closet at home with like clothes hanging in it or coats hanging in it. And when a kid is fixing to get in trouble, but they're not in trouble yet, you say, okay, I want you to go chill out in this space, and then when you're done being crazy, come back and see me. And so most people have some old bed pillows, a coat closet, those little tap lights, those battery-powered tap lights provide some soft light. That's a great thing to put in there. Those are a couple bucks. So for a few dollars, you created a nice calming area, and y'all can create, say whatever name you want to call it. Narnia. That's a good one. I like that. I like it. We just have a cave. Go chill in the cave. Learn the child's sensory triggers and the best ways to avoid, modify, and adapt them. We live in the real world. That's life. I had a kid once, a patient, who we do the water leaks outside. And this is a kid that I've been seeing for a couple years now, and he doesn't really have a ton of sensory defensiveness. And we were outside this past summer, and the actual temperature was 107. And we're splashing around in the water, and it's a bazillion degrees outside. And he goes, "But Miss Melissa, it's too cold." I'm like, okay, you're making that stuff up. So we can't avoid life. We can't avoid that the weather's going to get hot and that water's going to be chilly. So you have to learn to deal with it. But this particular child I let come inside, and then he said he was too hot inside and too cold outside. And this is a verbal kid. It's not like, so I'm pretty sure he was playing me. And then he goes, "But Miss Melissa, I have sensory processing problems." And I go, "Dude." And I happen to be wearing my t-shirt that said specializing in sensory integration, and this kid's a smart kid. I'm like, "Dude, read my shirt. I know about sensory integration. Do your work. I will let you choose work A or work B. We can modify it, but working is not an option." But learn the kid's sensory triggers and best ways to avoid, modify, and adapt them. I mean, if you know a kid does not like swings, a trip to Silver Dollar City to ride roller coasters is probably not going to be a fun trip for you guys. Maybe to a museum. Crystal Bridges may be better. But so there's sometimes you need to learn to just deal with it. It's life. Okay, we're going to do this for 1 hour, deal with it, and then we can go take a sensory break. There's modifying, again, letting the kid, and modifying and adapting, but putting the hoodies on and, dealing with life that way for the auditory processing. Okay, so common sensory triggers. That's us during Water Week. We don't usually wear tank tops and stuff. But I have so many people that say, "You will not believe my child screams when they get a haircut." And I'm like, no. I had a kid I evaluated 2 weeks ago, and they're like, but he doesn't like clothes, and tags and clothes, and socks, and you aren't going to believe, but he chews non-food objects all the time. And this wonderful mom wrote me 5 pages, handwritten, of all the sensory quirks on this 2-year-old. And she's like, "Is that normal? Is that normal?" And I kept telling her, "Well, it's not normal, but it's normal for here." Everything you're saying is not normal, but it's normal for what we see. So here are some common sensory triggers. So if you're seeing meltdowns around some of these things, there's a good chance it's sensory-based. So hair care, washing hair, cutting hair. I am not a beautician, but I have a few kids in the clinic that I've learned to start trimming around their ears. Here's my timer. Set it for 1 minute. I'm going to trim around your ears for 1 minute to work on that. And if you have problems with cutting hair, I have a local beautician that we're just starting it up this couple weeks. Her son has sensory issues, and she's a licensed hair cutter. She does my hair, beautician. And she's wanting to start cutting kids' hair in our clinic so that we have some of the sensory mechanisms and a non-judgmental environment, because, again, we love the kids we work with, but we tend to specialize in the screamers. So if a kid's screaming through a haircut, everyone at the clinic's just going to tune it out. There will be no judgment, that kind of stuff. So I'm not trying to advertise for her, but if you have a kid who screams through haircuts, let me know, and we can get some contact information, because that's just started. We haven't had our first haircut day yet. But washing hair, cutting hair, combing hair, clipping nails, brushing teeth, taking a bath shower, applying lotion. Those are all kind of tactile defensive things. Smells. The kid who said he was too cold in 105-degree weather, he's just fine if I have a grape or any fruity bubble gum. But if I put in, God forbid, some Trident, he goes, "Miss Melissa, you're chewing mint gum again." He cannot do his handwriting if I'm chewing mint gum. It's not worth that fight. I'll go get some grape bubble gum. But again, learning that kids are very defensive to particular smells. And this is particularly hard for the kids who can't tell you. You know, my kid, the patient I'm telling you about, that could tell me that he didn't like my mint gum. Some of these kids who are less verbal, they may just be throwing a fit, and you don't know that it's your mint gum. So then you have to be extra, put your detective hat on extra. But I always use the example, if you do have that child who's verbal, to ask why. Because I had a 14-year-old, she said she was going to come, but she couldn't make it. 14-year-old Molly, 14-year-old girl, highly verbal, used to be severely autistic, I think, but by the time I started seeing her, she was 14. And she was 14, about this tall, and she kept throwing screaming fits in Walmart. And I'm like, Molly, you are too old to be doing that. Why do you keep giving your mom fits at Walmart? Thinking the sounds, the smell, the social demands, the greeter, oh my goodness, the greeter, and then the greeter tries to hand you a sticker, and then your kid's like, no, I don't want a sticker, because the sticker is tactile, and you feel like a horrible mom because your kid is bad with the stickers. But anyway, I'm like, Molly, why do you not like Walmart? And she gives me this big, long explanation about child labor laws in China. And I'm like, Molly, if that's why you do not like Walmart, that's between you and your mom. You can go to Harps or something else. I don't know, but that's your prerogative. Yeah, I was kind of blown away. I just started at Jarvis at that time, and so I've learned to always ask, why are you throwing a fit? Why are you doing this? Because if you have a verbal kid, some of the answers may surprise you. Clothing is a huge issue. Tags in the clothing. Like I was just saying, my son never wears tags. He never wears buttons and zips. He's 5, and we've just now started all the things that most kids have difficulty with. Jeans, pants, shorts, etc. So, for example, some kids always want to wear jeans, or always want to wear pants. Some kids always want to wear shorts. Now that the season's changing and they're having to go from shorts and tank tops and flip-flops and Crocs, those beloved Crocs, to jeans and socks and shoes. A lot of kids, that alone, they turn cranky this time of year. It's very common for kids to be cranky this time of year. And you're like, what? But we had a good month. Why are the last 2 weeks been hellacious? It could be the weather changing, and it keeps going back and forth on us right now. So clothing could be a very big issue with them. Food, a lot of kids are very picky eaters. And you will have, and with food, again, is it behavior or is it sensory? It's really hard to tell, but you will have those kids who are truly so food defensive, and I equate it to, and you'll have, we had a very wonderful nutritionist, I don't know where she's from, told one of our clients, they'll get hungry enough, they'll eat. Oh. And this kid didn't eat for 2 days. And I've had patients end up in the ER with food and water, for dehydration and starvation. And I equate it to, if someone handed you a plate of flax and said, if you get hungry enough, you'll eat it. They won't. These kids won't eat. So, again, work with an OT, work with a dietitian who understands that some kids truly won't eat. Speech therapists are wonderful for working a lot with picky eaters. Kind of OT and speech work in combination a lot to work on being a picky eater. But if someone tells you, oh, they'll get hungry enough, they'll eat, understand that some kids won't. So always provide at least some, speech therapists call it preferred food. So if there's a plate of whatever, at least have one thing on the plate that they like. Now you can have 2 other things that they don't like and they have to eat those before they get dessert or something like that. But always provide at least some nutrition, please.
White cheddar cheeses, I'm sure, are part of the big food groups, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's at the top of the pyramid.
That's where our son was on.
And the muffin top still?
Nope, not even those.
Scratch another one off the list.
Not doing much with Skittles, is it?
That was our go-to. And some of the, and this is kind of interesting because a lot of therapists are very food motivated. We tend to not be. We'll use whatever we can get a kid to work. But that's not like the first or second thing we try. It's like the 4th or 5th thing we try. And a lot of therapists are very food motivated. Like, do this and get a Skittle, do this and get a Skittle, do this and get a Skittle. And if you have a picky eater, tell him so. I don't want that Skittle anyway. Another common sensory trigger is being surrounded by unpredictable people. They don't like to be touched. They don't know what they smell like. They don't know what they sound like. And then you have all the social aspects as well. More common sensory triggers. So again, I'm giving you lots of take-home tips versus, I can't sit here and diagnose, but hopefully by giving you lots and lots of tips, you'll be like, oh, that sounds like my child. Vestibular insecurity, so those are kids who do not like to swing. Those are the kids who do not like playground equipment. They're afraid of heights. Loud and noisy environments. PE, lunchroom, birthday parties. You always know, you can go to any birthday party and figure out the sensory kids. First of all, they have bonks on their head because they don't have protective extension. And then second of all, they start singing happy birthday and the sensory kids put their hands over their ears. So if you have a kid who does that, my own son, they had a little dance program, and I was so proud of him because he was 4.5 and he participated, how school does the little dance programs, and this was pretty low-key. It was actually held on the playground. So it's not on a stage or anything like that. So I was so proud of him. He actually participated, and because he's 4.5. And then all the parents go, yay, and he goes, and my parents were like, what? Like his grandparents were like, so? And I sit at the lunch table and I tell this story, and you could see every single one of the therapists go, oh, because the hands over their ears when no one else is holding their hands over their ears is an issue. Visual clutter, a messy room, can really be very distracting to kids. So these are your kids who are OCD. They're very orderly, so maybe they're not obsessive, do not qualify for a diagnosis of obsessive compulsive disorder. But these kids really do freak out if things are out of order. So it's their room. Don't mess with their stuff. Bare feet is the common one. We had such beautiful weather yesterday that we took it outside. We have a little side yard at our clinic. And we were doing obstacle courses with bare feet in the grass, digging stuff out of pumpkins. Yeah, that one was really gross to me. That was Wendy's idea. I'm like, that's nasty. And then the smell of a rotten pumpkin as they're digging little plastic animals, I thought that was too extreme, but they did it. We let one kid modify the task. She was autistic, and if she could talk her peers into getting the creature for her, I said, she's like, hey, I need some help here. I need a green rabbit. And if they were willing to do that, I was like, you know what? That's a better skill for her, is to ask for help and to talk to peers than to reaching in that nasty pumpkin. But bare feet is a big problem with a lot of them. That's why we have that beans and rice pool. So you've got our little toes sticking out of it because we don't like our feet buried. But we have pools of dried beans and rice that we play in like sandboxes. Okay, so I said all this stuff to freak a kid out. Here's how to calm them down. So oral input is incredibly calming. So sucking, blowing with straws or bubbles, biting, chewing. Oh, I didn't bring my chew necklaces. I have some websites at the end for chew necklaces, but there's a variety of chew necklaces, gum, hard candies, and also strong flavors. It's crazy, but you'll have a kid. I have a particular patient that likes to just scream and make random noises because he's a almost 5-year-old nonverbal kid with a diagnosis of autism. And so we're all sitting down trying to work on handwriting, and people are having trouble working in the room because he's just making loud noises. He's not unhappy. He's actually the happier he is, the louder he is. And I give him Altoids, which an Altoid would make me puke. I'm a little food defensive. I'm a little spicy defensive. He loves them. Stick an Altoid in that kid's mouth, and he's like, good to go. He can be much quieter. And his mom, we had the Altoids at the clinic. I had not tried them on him because I thought it was a little cruel. But his mom goes, oh no, I keep a little tin of the mini Altoids in my pocket, and I pop them to him all the time. So I'm like, okay. But salsa, cinnamon, strong sour, strong mint, a lot of kids find that input calming. Now again, your picky eaters, don't try the strong flavors with. But you'll have the kids, my biological children, crave the spicy, salty, the spicy and cinnamon more than I do. So we may be at La Huerta eating salsa and be like, oh, that's too much, and they're just like scooping it up and digging in. Proprioceptive input is calming as well. So we all know this. What do you do to a baby that's crying? You swaddle them up, you just wrap them tightly. Isn't that what they teach in every parenting class, is how to swaddle a baby properly, because that will calm them down. So we swaddle them up and we give them nice squeezing input on those joints. Well, you can't really swaddle a 10-year-old. You can, but it'd be a little weird.
She's agreeing with me.
Yeah. You need to be swaddled. Like, I don't know, I'm a little big for that. Oral input. Yeah. Yeah. Those are pretty tasty. So bear hugs. I don't know if I was part of the waiver program or not, but I called myself a glorified babysitter for a kid one summer with autism, and we were to go out to the community and take him to the park and all this other stuff. And if he told me on his little Delta talker, I don't know, I wasn't in OT school yet, if he could tell me on his little device that he wanted to go to Burger King or whatever fast food joint, Mom left money and I was supposed to take him out for lunch every day. So most days we would go to Burger King. And so we were in Burger King, and if we had to wait in line, take a 10-year-old with autism, they tend to be very impulsive, and waiting in line is not a good thing. So I would sit there and I would give him very deep pressure bear hugs. And did anyone know I was providing therapy to that child? No. You know, they just thought I was a loving babysitter. And so that's a very good way to calm a kid down if you're having to stand in line anywhere, if you're out and about, if you're in church and you're trying to calm them down. That's a great one because it doesn't take, you know, all it takes is 2 arms. It doesn't take any special equipment, money, time. Weighted vests and blankets. I should have brought my weighted. I was not thinking about this. This Halloween thing really screwed me up this week. But a weighted vest, you can get them out of the catalogs. They cost about $100. I have made several, and I do not sew. So I've made several just hand stitching, and I don't. The machine kind of scares me, so I don't even use the machine. So what I've done is you go to Walmart and you get or Goodwill or whatever, and you get a denim vest, and you cut the sleeves off. So there you have your vest part. And on the inside, I just hand stitched little pockets or hand stitched bean bags that I made with BB shot. So my weighted vest cost me about $25 to $30 versus $100. And then my son, he has a weighted vest that he has at school. I took dinosaur fabric and glued little patches to it, so it looks more normal. And I kind of like those because a lot of the ones in the catalogs look special. And I always think that our children have a hard enough time fitting in that we don't want them having this big choo-choo train vest unless that's what they really want. So I like the denim weighted vest because my son, keeps his on the hook, on his coat hook at school. I don't think anyone knows that it's a weighted vest besides his teacher, and she'll say, go put on your vest, and he goes and puts it on, and it's no big deal. So if you're making it yourself, you want it about 5 to 10% of the child's body weight. Weighted blankets are also pretty easy to make because they're about $100 to $150 in the catalog, so you can do that. Or you get that polar fleece material, you know, that blanket material that you just have to tie, that you don't have to sew, that you make the print, so you do the tie thing. And then you take the super industrial Velcro and tack on the ankle weights. You know, in the sporting goods section, they have ankle weights that have these little tubes. They have it at Walmart. These little tubes that you pull out of them, and just tack those onto the blanket. Voila, we have a weighted blanket, and that's actually zero sewing. Push-ups cost no money. Weight-bearing exercises. I know I was stressed out last night, and I am not an exercise kind of person at all, but I was really stressed out. I could not get my computer to work. I started doing some push-ups because I was freaked out. My computer was not cooperating at all. Jumping. I love jumping on a mini trampoline. That is the one piece of equipment that I will tell my parents to go out and buy. They're about $30 to $35 at like Target, Walmart, Academy, that kind of thing. I heard that Toys R Us is having a special on some with the handlebar for like $45 right now. I'm going to go pick one of those up today. Running. So we all know those people who you get that pounding of the joints as you run. We all know those people who cannot go a day without running. I have a coworker who's one of those, and she runs marathons and things like that. It is very calming. So again, we're taking where they crash and burn and end up in the ER. We're trying to find a more normal way to do that, more appropriate way to do that. Swaddling the kids little. I love making sandwiches with couch cushions. So again, no extra money, but you take large bed pillows or couch cushions and you make a sandwich with the kid. Make sure they can breathe. Don't squish their head. But you squish them between the couch cushions. And then also making them into a burrito with a quilt or a comforter. You just wrap them up like a burrito. So it's
And
like
with their head out.
Yes, and with their head out. Don't suffocate the children. So you roll them up. So again, as you're rolling, a lot of times you get that vestibular for the kids who like the vestibular, and then you are swaddling a 10-year-old. So you can kind of swaddle a 10-year-old, but it's very calming.
Our son likes this thing where we just do this on his back or his chest. And if there's music going, I'll do it in tune to the music. Not beating him, but just gently. And if I stop, he'll back up into my hands to tell me that he wants me to do it some more.
Yeah,
With me, it's up like this because he's taller than me.
I think the kids tend to like firm pressure, so when you're doing this stuff, remember tactile input, like the clothing, the tags in the clothes, getting a haircut, getting your nails clipped, that puts you into fight or flight, that makes them think there's lions in the room. The deep pressure, like a big bear hug, is more calming. And the kids who don't like that affection a lot of times, or don't like you touching them, it's because a lot of times they don't know if you're going to give them light touch or deep pressure. So that's where you have to rely on the weighted blanket or the couch cushion or something like that, where you're not physically touching them, because they don't know. I mean, even if you're mama, they don't know what kind of touch you're going to give them. Okay, so no, some people can find vestibular input scary rather than calming. So disclaimer, don't say, oh, my kid's melting down, let's put him on the swing. That may not be what they need. That may freak them out more. But a lot of kids are calmed with vestibular input. These are the kids who like to spin in circles. They'll just stand there and spin in circles. Let him. Or I take my son's hand and I just twirl him. Like, so we'll be standing in line somewhere and I'll just take his finger and I'm sitting there twirling him. Yeah. Yeah. Kids dance. Doing therapy. Swinging, spinning, running. Again, running's a good one where you get both. Jumping. Again, jumping's a good one where you get the proprioceptive and the vestibular for calming. Rocking, just putting them in your lap and rocking them. A lot of times we'll take a kid on a swing that's freaking out and, we'll snuggle them with some deep input, maybe even wrap them in the weighted blanket or the weighted vest, and just, my feet are still touching the ground and we're just going this, if I have a kid that's really freaked out, that tends to be my go-to with them. And climbing. Okay, so tricks for both. Say I have a kid who melts down all the time. They throw 2-hour fits on a regular basis. I've been there as a parent. What do I do? Because I don't know if it's sensory and I don't know if it's behavior. So tricks to help with both. So again, structure and routine. I've said it probably 20 times today. That helps whether it's sensory or behavior. And any parenting book that just does sensory or just does behavior modification techniques will tell you that structure and routine is one of the best ways to help a kid with behavior. Ask a child to repeat back auditory directions. I had one patient, great kid, Harrison, was doing an obstacle course, and he was a good kid. He didn't test boundaries, and he just kept flying through the obstacle course and just not following my directions. I kept going, Harrison, don't go so fast on that balance beam. Harrison, don't go so fast on the balance beam. Again, this was when I was a new therapist at Jarvis. I was like, Harrison, what did I just tell you? To go faster on the balance beam? All he heard was balance beam and fast. He did not hear the don't go so. I know both my kids go to preschool and they don't say don't run. They say use walking feet. So you always tell a kid what you want them to do rather than don't say what you don't want them to do. You always say what you want them to do. Instead of don't scream, use a quiet voice, use a whisper voice. So again, always tell them the action that you want them to do. And I have a brother who's now a pediatrician. Doesn't have any sensory issues at all. But his favorite line growing up, and he's now a pediatrician, so obviously he turned out okay. His favorite line growing up was, well, you didn't tell me I couldn't. For example, Mom said, don't, with Nerf guns, not real guns, with Nerf guns, don't shoot apples off your little brother's head. So the next day, he was shooting eggs off the little brother's head. She said, don't light fires outside. So he lit fires in the attic. So I don't know how exactly to switch those. But again, his favorite line was, well, you didn't tell me I couldn't, yada, yada. So if you tell them what they're supposed to do, that helps negate some of that. Use few words and simple commands. Again, walking feet for stop running. I tell kids all the time, wash hands. Again, we do shoes, socks, wash hands. I don't say, now Johnny, I want you to go into the bathroom, I want you to use soap, I want you to wash your hands, I want you to use a paper towel. No. Wash hands. Picture enriched written schedules. I love these, and the speech therapists tell me that if you can actually take photographs of stuff, that's even better. And now, I'm not in on the iPhone technology and all that, but I imagine it'd be pretty easy to take the pictures, and I'm sure that would be crazy easy there. But we have the old school of, we have photographs that were laminated with contact paper with Velcro on the back and the Velcro strip on the wall, and it's first his ball pit, and then we're going to jump on the trampoline, and then we're going to do riding, and then we're going to play in the beans and rice, and then we're going to get our treasure box. So we make a physical list, and then also that act of taking it off, it helps with transitions. And then even kids who are more verbal, say we're in a car, like my son, a lot of times I'll do, okay, we're going to go to school, then we need to go to the clinic, and then we're going to go to grandma's house. And like he'll even tell me now, can we put that on the list? So some of your more verbal kids won't need the visual list. You kind of have to grade it to your child. But if you don't have pictures in front of you, that's better than nothing. Even my almost 2-year-old, I'll say school, then grandma's house. School, then grandma's house. I don't know if she gets it or not, but at least we're starting to establish that ability. And then timers are the greatest thing in the whole world. I know this watch looks fabulous with this outfit. I never go without my $23 Walmart watch. Y'all are all impressed, right? But it has a countdown timer on it, and I never leave home without it. I would have to call in sick at work if it ever broke so that I could run to Walmart and get a new one. But it has a countdown timer, so we could be playing at the park. I know on vacation we would be swimming, and it's like, okay, you have 3 more minutes, and then it's time to go in and get ready for bed. So I use this all the time, and so both my kids at the clinic, they know the sound of my watch versus other people's timers. They know, my biological children know the sign of my watch. When they hear the beeping, they stop what they're doing, and they're like, what's next? They know that sound means something is changing. And I've given them the verbal cues, too. But even my very severe, almost nonverbal kids with autism, they hear that beep beep, and they stop what they're doing. Now, they may give me an evil grin, and they keep doing it again anyway, but they know that sound means something's going on, and we're going to change. I love timers. Again, that's something that...
There's an app for that.
Yeah, fancy people using that for
Do you
that.
know what it's called?
There's a sand timer app. Oh, there's so many different timers.
Just type in timer in the app store.
And then there's the timers with the little red piece of pie that gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. I've seen that one on the iPhone that people like a lot. That's like $8 in the catalog for the real one. I'm addicted to cooking competitions, and one that obviously didn't replay. But I thought it was so cool because they had the big one like from the Salmon's Preston catalog, like up there with the red pie wedge. I was like, that's a therapy clock that they were using for the cooking competition. Tricks for both still. Stay calm. If the kid goes up here and you go up here, and then the kid goes up here and you go up here, and then the kid goes up here and then you go up here, no one's coming down. So it's really, really hard, but you have to be the adult and try to be the one to stay calm. Always rule out a language delay. If you're worried if it's sensory or behavior, always rule out a language delay. Again, to make sure that they know what you're talking about. And you can say, well, I have a 3-year-old and he talks in beautiful sentences. He's just fine. We've seen this in the clinic. Highly verbal kid. They don't get it. They don't understand what you're saying. They don't understand your facial expressions. I had one kid that he was getting in trouble. He was almost 3. He wasn't following directions. And a lot of times I'll go, I'm going to help you follow directions. Especially for the little kids that, that's still doing whatever, like doesn't want to get out of the ball pit. I'll go, I'm going to help you because you're still in the ball pit and the timer went off and it's time for you to do something else now. And I'll pick him up and go take him to the next activity. And he saw that face and he goes, like, that's great. And I'm like, fine. I have like 20 kids named Aiden, so I'm not giving anything away. I was like, Aiden, you are forcing me to make the maddest face I can right now because you are not understanding that the timer went off and you're still in the ball pit and you do not understand. So these kids don't understand facial expressions a lot of times. He thought that it was fabulous that I was going to help him and that he was doing what he was supposed to be doing. I was like, no, dude, you need to get out of the ball pit. Social stories are these magical speech therapy things. So what you do with the social story, say Thanksgiving's coming up. And it's even better if you can draw them, or there are apps for that, where you can put the kid in the social story. So it's good if you can go to the library and get a book on Thanksgiving and proper ways to act and what's going to happen. It's even better if you can make your own book. And kids are fine with stick figures. Just put the color of hair that the kid is, or try to put like their blue shoes or something so that they know it's them. But put the kid in the book and say, Thanksgiving is coming up. It is a holiday where we spend time with family. You know, we are going to go to Aunt Carol's house on Thanksgiving. We don't go home. We don't go to school. And you're expected to sit at the table. And you don't have to eat the food if you don't want to. Mom will bring your favorite thing. You know, let them know what's going to happen. This is great if a new baby's coming. This is great to start school. This is great if they're cranky pants at school. And we need a social story of what is expected to them at school. Okay, sing. I am so not one of these people who is like in choir at school, or like even likes Glee, and I'm hearing this from other people. Like, I'm not into the musical thing at all. But singing is magical, and I get through my day. My husband's out of town a whole lot, so I have a kid that's almost 5 and a kid that's almost 2, and I'm work full time. I get through my day by singing "Where Is Thumpkin?" And I got this off of one of the OT therapy CDs, and her song was, put your socks on, and your shoes, walk to the bus stop, off to school, off to school. So I say, get in your car seat, and off to school. And then I sing, hair and tea. So like, we're done eating breakfast, it's time to brush your hair and brush your teeth. I have a girl at the clinic that we wash our hands, then brush your hair, then brush your teeth. So I go hands, hair, teeth, hands, hair, teeth. So again, they hear you singing. They know that that's a transition. It's calm. It's happy. It's not like, some kids may freak out at the timers. And so I can make up anything to Where Is Thumpkin. And I've noticed my little almost 2-year-old has started like making up her own songs on what she wants the transition to be. But again, it's part of that you calming down too, because I don't know how many times singing has kept me from screaming at my own kids. So it helps calm things down. It helps tell them the transition. And give reasonable choices. For example, brushing teeth is not an option. Choosing the red toothbrush or the blue toothbrush is. And I don't know how many times, we always do handwriting at the clinic. I don't know how many times I've had a kid color. And the kids who have fine motor problems, who are weak, they do not like to color. So I'll say, okay, Susie, I want you to color this fish. No! Do you want the red crayon or the blue crayon? Red. I'm shocked every time it works, but it really does work more often than not. Not always, but it's another trick to have in your bag. Again, I'm just giving you tricks. I don't have magic fairy dust, but I'm giving you tricks, and hopefully some of the tricks will work with whoever you're concerned about.
On the rule out language delay, do you mean like make sure that they're not disobeying because they're not understanding, and then adapt it accordingly? Or I'm not exactly sure I understand.
I was actually, that is true, yes, to have them like, that's more in the repeat back directions. I'm saying get a speech therapy evaluation.
Oh.
Or talk to the pediatrician about a language delay, like a documentable
I see.
2 standard deviations from the mean language delay. I know my son, who tends to be a screamer, we've had 3 speech therapy evaluations so far. Because anytime we're going through a rough patch and I'm like, well, okay, I'm about to hit him with some intensive behavior modification. Let me make sure it's not a language delay. We're having trouble at school. Let me make sure that it's not a language delay. And sometimes the speech therapist will tell you everything is just fine. And that's great. Then it's more likely behavior and sensory. But that's just one thing to check off your list, because if a kid doesn't understand what you're saying, if he doesn't understand those nonverbal communication skills, again, even if the kid is very articulate, they're like, well, no matter what I do, I get it wrong anyway, so I try. We see a lot of that in the clinic where the kid just don't get it. And so, again, these can be kids who are very articulate, but they don't understand the pragmatics, those nonverbal communication skills, the context of language. These are the kids that I'll say, I was doing a group therapy once with a bunch of preschoolers, and I said something, and I go, oh, no, you guys aren't going to understand that. I need to be more concrete. And Nicholas pipes up and he goes, Miss Melissa, these are mats. This isn't concrete. That kid was in speech therapy, so you could see where they would get into trouble, and people think they're mouthy and obstinate, but they just don't understand what you're saying. So I love my speech therapists, and I send many referrals over to them, and they don't hesitate to tell me when a kid doesn't qualify. That's why I use them. Any other questions? I try to allow plenty of time for questions because like the last 4 presentations I've given, I've run out of time at the end. So I try to make this presentation shorter and allow more time for discussion and problem solving.
Uh-oh.
Okay, this one sounds bad, and I almost took this one out. But if you have more than one kid, that's the greatest thing in the world. More than one kid in therapy, more than one kid in your house. Use the kids against each other as positive peers. Who's going to get their jammies on first? Who wants to help me clean off the table? Who wants to put the napkins in the trash can? Who wants to blah, blah, blah? Again, I'm shocked that this one works almost every morning in my house. But I'm like, seriously? Who wants to be the first one to brush their teeth? Me! And they're both racing in there. Okay. And if I told them, go brush your teeth, it would have been a nightmare. This one also works in my house. I've not really used it in the clinic, but this one works in my house. Okay, it's time to take a bath. What animal are we going to be? And they tell me an animal, and so we are dinosaurs or whatever. Another thing that's really worked this week, and I'm going to be ridiculous, I'm glad they're videotaping it, is my son learned the like the chicken dance. And so we like fly into the bathroom to go get dressed, or we fly into the bathroom to take our bath, or the bedroom to get dressed, or we fly into the car seats. And like this morning, I wasn't starting it, and my daughter was like, like, hey, whatever. Anything that keeps me from, I tend to be a very patient person, I think, that anything that keeps me from getting upset with my own children, I love. Regular proprioceptive and vestibular input, again, that's the jumping on the trampoline, any exercise really. And I'm a firm believer that there are no bad kids. I mean, I've been a therapist for 8 years, have been working at Jarvis for 6 years. We tend to see the kids, we always giggle and say, you're a 3-year-old who's been kicked out of 3 daycares? It's exactly, we tend to take the kids, we love the kids who've been kicked out of daycare. That's our cup of tea. So we take the kids that have been labeled bad, and they are our favorites. Because usually take the bad kids, and in a few weeks of therapy, they're now doing work, and they're hugging on you. You see so much progress with those bad kids, because they're usually the most capable kids. They usually are the kids with the most potential. You just have to put your detective hat on and learn how to harness it. So we love the kids who've been kicked out of daycare because they tend to have the most potential.
I think that my center zones in on that as well. We like to take the kids that are a little more challenging sometimes. But I guess one of the big reasons why I'm here today, too, is to where do you go when you have a parent that isn't supporting their non-work? Because we can do all these things at school, but then it's undone as soon as they get into the car seat. And so I'm just struggling with 2 in particular right now that I've had at my first center, and I've just built a second one. They followed all of us, which is great. And we love the babies, but mom and dad, or maybe there's just a mom or just a dad, and they're not on board, and so it's very challenging, and they're not doing some of these things to help, and so I'm kind of frustrated, and we've tried a lot, and my teachers are degreed, and we go to these trainings, and we're using ages and stages screening tools and things, and we're giving that information to parents, but then it's like the buck stops with them, and so what is out there that we can get them some more training or just knowledge, or what is your suggestion?
I have a saying, you probably heard it, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. We're very fortunate in our clinic that we tend to have, by nature of being a private, freestanding clinic, outpatient clinic, the parents that we see have put in the time to bring their kids to therapy 2 hours a week. So that's obviously, it weeds out a lot of unmotivated parents. We have some unmotivated parents, but that weeds out a lot of unmotivated parents. My best advice would be do you have them in the school all day? Well, so you do have them at least, 6 hours, 5 days a week?
We have them about 10 hours.
Okay, so 50 hours a week. I mean, So you're probably spending more time with them than the parents are.
And then like this one, specifically, we're in behavioral modification plans right now. And, you know, mom comes in on the cell phone, or he picks up 2 days a week, and it's just, we don't know what else to do at this point. We're kind of at a loss. The whole classroom is regressing. Teachers are frustrated. Parents are complaining.
I mean, you actually may get some better help with the nanny. Have you tried seeing if the nanny would carry over? But, I mean, I hate to be, I'm an optimistic person, and so I would keep with gentle persistence, but I certainly have kids in the clinic that I think, say, should go to a neurologist, or I have a particular kid that, you know, mom and dad are divorced and no one's carrying over with any kind of discipline at home, and there's all kinds of excuses on why they're getting in trouble at school. And I'm like, we need some consistency and stuff at home, but you can just, the only thing I know is to keep gently, pushing the things, because if you go too hard, then they'll leave your clinic, or they'll leave your school, and then where are they going to be? You know, they're not with someone who knows them and knows their history and loves them. So I don't have any answers for you.
Would it help, I mean, because you know this family, would it help to perhaps pair them up with another parent and have who could mentor that first parent? They could become friends, and here's what I do with my child, and then through that relationship.
In the classroom, like I said, we've been together. These babies are 4 now, and so they've been together for 4 years. And there's a tight niche group of about 4 of them, but I would say that their parenting skills are about the same. And so, you know, they aren't running all over the place at birthday parties. They are wrestling with no consequence. And so it's kind of, I feel like I'm kind of stuck. You know, I feel like we're doing all we can.
And you've mentioned, hey, how about,
yes. And so
you know,
now,
this?
you know, we're getting these plans put in place where we need their, you know, observation up at the school for that hard period of the every several times we're doing it now. But it's kind of like things. As I was doing it, or you feel the teachers, and, you know, and so that's kind of why I'm here. Is like we're. But I think at this
That's a
point
tough
we can
one.
just continue doing what we're doing and offer them the resources and the support. And like this kid out, I'm going to transfer
Mhm.
the group of 4, and it's kind of take our advice and try to work with it. Find a center that maybe needs their needs a little bit better.
Well, and I've actually gone and given several different talks on autism to like all the Montessoris around here, and they will tell me a lot of times the same thing. Well, I have this kid, like I showed this video and they didn't even know what I was trying to show. They're like, that sounds just like that kid. And I'm like, they're like, that kid's named echolalia? And I'm like, no, that was, I mean, and these are teachers, they're wonderful teachers, but they've not heard the medical term echolalia. Echolalia is where a kid repeats back everything, or this kid was reciting a dinosaur train video with a lot of digga in between it. And they're like, that sounds just like Johnny. And I'm like, really? Does Johnny have identified special needs? And they're like, no. I'm like, how old is he? 3. But he doesn't talk much. He just talks like that. I'm like, I'm going to bet you Diet Coke right now that if he gets a speech eval, he would qualify. But how do you make a parent go get a speech eval? And because these are in centers where there are no identified special needs or anything like that. And so that's a common thing that they were asking me. And, you know, as a teacher, you can lovingly say, you know what, I've noticed X, Y, and this is how I usually approach it. You know, if I have a kid a parent that I think may not take my word on something, but I usually goes, you know, I noticed X, Y, and Z. And in your case, you have a classroom full of normal, correct? You know, I've noticed that Johnny does this and that, and no other kids in the classroom do that. Have you mentioned that to the pediatrician? And I kind of put it on the pediatrician to have a discussion. But if they're like, nope, nothing wrong with my kid, I'll be like, okay, glad we had this conversation. You know, so you can only gently push it, but I usually phrase it as, I've noticed this. Have you discussed that with the pediatrician? Or have you noticed that at home? Because we're noticing this. Have you noticed that at home? Well, no other kids do that. But I'm sure you've had that conversation. So, I mean, if you have a parent that is not willing to go provide for their kid, I mean, I'm sure I won't tell that story because this is going to be posted. I was going to tell a family story, But anyway, there are some people who just, and they're fine with the status quo. And so if they're fine with the status quo, you can't make them change it.
Yeah, you can't change. To some parents, you cannot do anything with it.
I'm afraid that's where we're at. I hate it. You know, because you hate to, I feel like we're getting up, which we're not. We've done it, we've tried for 4 years. But it's just getting to a point now, like, Mom's been in my office all week, literally, almost every day. She's been at the center observing. Dad's been on conference calls, which he really isn't a teacher. But today, since the Sunday school was reading, you know, and so it's like you're setting your child up who's already having issues. Then we were in the cake at breakfast, and Mom was sitting there observing, and then correct, and it's just like, you do.
I mean, if you really are having that many problems, I have had, long story short, I've been at Jarvis for 6 years. I moved to Kansas for 9 months, and we came back. And I felt like I was almost given the ultimatum, which I told them straight up. I have a kid who's a fifth thrower. I work in this area. Please let me help you guys. I didn't want my help. But they basically sat me down and said, you need to get this kid to a psychologist because we want him on meds at 3. We need you to get to this kid to a psychologist or we're not the right place for him. So they kind of gave me an ultimatum. And I said, yes, ma'am. And so I took him to the psychologist that they gave me the number for. I'm going off on a tangent. But in addition to, I drove, remember about 2 years ago where we had the 24 inches of snow at the January 30th, February 1st? Yeah, I drove from Kansas to Jarvis and Wendy Cassidy speech pathology. So I get OT-PT speech about, in addition to psych, because I was like, I'll do what you want, but then I want to do my comfort zone. And the psychologist came back and the school was crazy. But, and basically said in the report that school was crazy and they needed to learn to deal with a fairly difficult child. And all the reports came back, you need to deal with a fairly difficult child. Quirky, but in the normal bell curve. So, I mean, if you truly are done, I could give them the ultimatum that, you know, we love the kid, we've been working with him for 4 years, we'd hate to lose, but, and maybe even do it, we need help, you know.
That's what we've done
But
this week.
if they aren't going to listen to it, you know, because I've told that to parents before and said, I need some help. Your kid, you know, I work with kids with behavior problems. I've been working with them for a year, but I need some more tricks in my bag. I need a second pair of eyes. Will you please take them to the psychologist and see if there's anything I'm missing? And you can't make them, but I've had that conversation before, and if they won't, I have had to threaten. I had one kid, he's my favorite kid ever, and I don't care if he sees this video because his name is Samuel, and he's fabulous. He discharged from my services a long time ago, but he was a screaming nightmare, and speech therapy actually gave Mom the ultimatum that if you do not take this kid to psych, we are not seeing him anymore because he was such a behavior problem. So you wouldn't be out of line making that ultimatum if that's what needs to be done for the classroom. You know, I think you definitely are within your rights to do that.
And something else, how old are the children for? Is that you might want to just let them know what's going to happen in the future because the schools are not going to allow that.
I've shared it and given them every resource. And again, like, we're kind of at the final stage here. She's got 2 weeks to either find alternative placement or do our plan of 3 days a week for 2 hours a day. Either Mom, Nanny, or Dad at the school to help. She's already done play therapy, did it for a month. We had no accident incident reports. Because it was working, we just stopped going. So now we're back to 4 months of before we did. We just don't understand. Why not? There's no change. There's no change. We've been seeing it for 4 years, but not for, you know, that maybe just giving them one more resource, you know.
Yes. Do y'all have any consultants that go out into the school setting and observe a child or take a child's report from any therapy location and read over the report and then go in and give recommendations to teachers or staff members of this is the best way to work with the child or these are the modifications that we can use based on this OT and PT and speech eval that we have on them? So you do consulting work?
Yeah, pretty much all of us at the clinic, we work Monday through Thursday. And so I tell parents all the time, if you want me to come to an IEP meeting, schedule it on a Friday and I'll be there to support you.
What if the child does not have an IEP?
Or just to observe in the preschool. I've observed kids in, like, I've gone to observe at preschool, you know, they're getting in trouble at preschool all the time. We don't know what's going on. we go and observe in the preschool. We go observe. We had a kid that was discharging from therapy, and Wendy Jarvis actually went to their house to see, they had 3 little ones under the age of 4, what's going on there. So we will go into the classroom, even if they don't have an IEP, of course. We go into the
make
classroom.
recommendations to the teacher to follow based on that child's OT report or eval.
I don't know for sure if speech does that, but usually the primary concern is behavior. And so that usually falls on the occupational therapist to help deal with the behavior. So no, that's what we do on Fridays, is we do that kind of thing.
Do y'all bill Medicaid, or is that private pay at that point?
It's called Miss Melissa is Nice and Loves Her Patients. Private pay. No, it's free. We don't charge anything for doing that. We write letters. Like I had a parent call, because I told her, I was like, I know your kid's having behavior problems at school. Schedule on a Friday, I'll be there. But I do have a little bit of a life. I've been given several of these presentations lately, and she goes, okay, I got it for the night. I was like, I'm going out of town that weekend. Like, I just booked the hotel yesterday. Like, I need to spend some time with my kids. And I was like, if you rebook it, I will come. Or is a letter from me making recommendations, is that sufficient? And she goes, oh, no, because this is a mama lion. You have those more meek mamas, and this is a mama lion. And she goes, no, I think if I'm armed with your recommendations on your letterhead, that's going to be enough for me. And so I offered to do either way. And I was like, look, if you want to give the school my number, if they want to call me, because I'm constantly talking to principal. Usually the assistant principal and the teachers are the ones who talk to us. But no, we just do that as part of, again, it takes a village. So we just do that naturally as providing good care, because I want my kids, see, I'm saying it again, I want my therapy kids to succeed in life, and so we do that. And it's not usually required that often, but if a parent wants us to, we definitely go and do that. And just observe them in the classroom, make recommendations, talk to the teacher, that kind of thing. Because I think that is helpful to see them in the different environments. Since we are a private clinic, I want to know what's going on at school. And a lot of times we're the ones that initiate it. They're like for example, Wendy has a kid that she goes, that's more low level, and the school's saying they're able to do X, Y, and Z. And she's like, that kid is not able to do X, Y, and Z. They are just babysitting him. They are not working with him at school. There's no way he's doing X, Y, and Z. She's like, I want to see that. So, and she actually was at that school with another kid, and she walked by and happened to see this kid just watching TV in the classroom, in the special needs classroom. And she's like, I don't think they're making them work. I want to go see that kid. So a lot of times the school doesn't want us to come in. And I don't know the rules against it, but usually if we're just a little bit assertive, I've never had a school refuse for me to go in and just go sit in the back and be a fly on the wall for an hour or two on a Friday. There you go. Okay, so my favorite sensory toys. There's a video of my favorite sensory toys floating somewhere in cyberspace.
Yeah, on our Community Parent Resource Center Facebook.
We reposted it too. Go to Jarvis Pediatric Therapy. We have a Facebook webpage, Twitter, Facebook page. Yeah, the least technological person in the clinic is the one who basically keeps up the Facebook page. So if you want to get a hold of me, that's actually a pretty good way to get a hold of me. But my favorite sensory toys, mini trampolines, weighted vests, snakes. Again, for no sew option, you just put dried beans and rice or beans or whatever in a long tube sock, tie it at the end, take a Sharpie and make a snake face at the edge of it, put it on the shoulders, provide some weight. Fidget toys, just all those little push balls and things like that. Oral input, shoe necklaces and shoe toys, straws, water bottles, juice boxes, whistles, bubbles. Blocking out auditory input by covering ears, using hoodies, headphones, earplugs. TheraBand on chair legs. I don't know if y'all seen this before. So you take a chair. I'm going to grab a chair over here. I'm going to try to do my best to demonstrate. So you take a chair and you put TheraBand just on the front 2 legs. So TheraBand is something you can get cheap. It's like you buy a whole bunch of it for less than $10 at Walmart. And then the kid, this is usually for older kids, can slip their feet in. And I knew a kindergarten teacher did this with standardized testing. And so the kid can sit there and kick against it all they want. They're not making a sound. It's not a therapy ball that can be thrown across the room. It stays in place. And so she said she got really good results. Again, I got that idea from a kindergarten teacher, and then as I give it to other people, they're like, yeah, we already knew about that. So that's another cheap toy, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's on the video, and I reposted it to our Facebook page. Beach ball seats, I got this from a conference. You know, they have those disco sits, those little air bladder things. I had someone at a conference say, before you buy that, go to the dollar store, get a beach ball, and put that much air in it. And that way it becomes the wonderful air bladder cushion. It's not as durable as the other one, but you can at least, for $1, see if it's going to work with that child before you go and spend the $25, $30 on the disco sit. So I was like, that's a great idea. And one teacher's like, I'm going to the dollar store and getting them for my whole class. So that's a good one. How will it work?
Is it turned off?
Yeah, it has no lights on.
Oh, it's not going
I probably pushed the button by accident. There we go. That's why it's not right. Okay, everyone giggles with this one. Okay, oral input and vestibular input are the universal commerce. Can I give you some list of those? The quickest way to provide sensory input is through the mouth and the groin area. Survival of the species. We need to eat and we need to reproduce. Therefore, if you want a child to keep his hands out of his pants, provide more oral input. So again, provide the Altoids, provide the chew necklaces. And again, you don't say, take your hands out of your pants. You say, like, clap your hands or something.
Good hands.
Yeah, something. Yeah, you tell them something that you want them to do instead of take your hands out of your pants. Now, I know I'm this way with my son because he's oral and he'll do finger, mouth, nose, mouth, nose, mouth, nose, mouth. Gross. So I will say, put your hands down. So I actually am telling him something to do, but I would like it better if I was a better mom and therapist and I was giving him a different fidget instead. Which brings me to never simply take away an unwanted sensory input. You need to replace it. So when I have a parent coming into the clinic, or my husband, saying, well, the kid just chews on his shirt all the time. My son will chew on his shirt to where he is completely drenched and it looks like he spilled a cup of water on his shirt. And I'm like, if you take away the oral, he'll find some other way to calm himself. And I'd much rather him chew on his shirt than have his hands in his pants. So if we want him to stop chewing on his shirt, we need to get him a chew necklace, which is what we have done. So you never simply take away an unwanted sensory input, you need to replace it. So whenever a parent is talking about, oh, they're chewing on this and that, I say, well, let's replace it with something that's more appropriate, gum. I always wear a necklace that I kind of fiddle with and chew. I usually wear a more durable one than this one. So you want to find some way to be normal. I know my daughter is going through a biting phase, and I left her chew necklace at home, so I just took a lanyard, like the one on your, you know, the main badge lanyard, like it's around your neck, and I gave her to that to kind of chew on and fidget for the day. So anyway, you never want to simply take away unwanted sensory input. You need to replace it.
What about like with my grandson? He doesn't really fidget and with himself or anything, but he is very bad about like putting toys like in his pull-up, and it doesn't matter if he gets went to the restaurant or not, and then he wants to pull the toy out. Gets to be a pain.
I would try to say you can put it in your pocket, like put it in your pocket, not your pull-up kind of deal. That opens up the whole issue of bathroom stuff, and I keep meaning to, I'm going to horribly embarrass him, but I have a kid who's quite a bit older, not a kid in the clinic, who's quite a bit older, who went through a horrible poo smearing phase and just into that. And now he's like 12-ish and is back in the clinic for physical therapy. And I really want to ask him, because he's a very verbal, very mature kid, but I'm afraid I'm going to embarrass him. But I don't know the answer to that, because I would imagine that that may be going into the whole bathroom playing with your urine and feces that I honestly don't know my kids do. And people say, oh, we'll give them
for a while he would love to finger paint with it, and, you know. But he's been out of that stage, and now, like I said, even if he's not went to the bathroom and stuff, he'll come in there all the time and he'll go, oh, but, you know, and he's got toys in his pull-up. And it's like, no, don't do that. That's nasty, you know, or something. He'll try to tell him, you know, try to talk to him. He's 5, but he just doesn't, you know.
Is it in the front of the pull-up or the back of the pull-up?
Usually the back.
Okay.
Usually the back.
It's probably...
And it's full of toys.
Yeah.
Full.
It's probably his method of sensory
And
input.
there's a lot of times he's even done it and forgot that he's done it, and he'll go and sit down and then go, oh, and have one in his crack or something, you know, and hurt himself sometimes, you know. Don't do that. It's not nice. Don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. You know,
I'm thinking if you could find some, like she said, replacing it with another type of sensory input, although replacing sensory input in that particular area is difficult.
yes, exactly. We've tried.
Maybe you can get him, maybe you can make him a special pouch that he can wear.
I was thinking like a fanny pack
A special
maybe
yeah,
a good
maybe.
thing.
toy pouch.
I hadn't thought about something like that. Yeah.
Because kids a lot of times have the comfort items that they can't live without, and that comfort item can change like on an hourly basis, and then all of a sudden it's bedtime, and they're like, but I need my Nemo fish. Yeah, I've been there. And you're like, but you didn't care about your Nemo fish for the last 2 months, and all of a sudden you want to know where that is and what bucket it is. And so maybe if it's a comfort item and he wants a place to stick it, then it could be,
Oh,
you know,
it's just any toy. It doesn't really matter.
but it could have comfort, and I have toys with me. So I mean, I would try the pocket or the fanny pack, and if it's a sensory thing, I would try again oral and proprioceptive input and see, just wear them out. Wear them out in the exercise realm, not wear them out like people say.
So that's what our problem right now is. He's gained a lot of weight because he's decided not to be physical here lately, and we've tried just about it. I mean, even physical therapists right now, they're having trouble with getting him to do things because he just wants to go and sit down, and that's it.
Well, and then I'd also be looking at, this is our last slide, is looking at other medical reasons, but are we dealing, is there something medical going on? Is there something metabolic going on?
Well, so that's
And
what
is
they
there
thought, and they've done,
just nothing with that?
checked everything. I mean, they, for a while, thought it was maybe his heart. We're soon going for sleep apnea.
Good.
And, you know, it's just, they don't know. They
And
really don't.
has an OT looked at him? Just to look at,
He sees an
okay.
OT all the
He's
time.
physical on what he likes to do.
Not my idea syndrome. I can diagnose. That's the one diagnosis I give, is not my idea syndrome. So, and that one's tough. I did read once, and I'm saying this as an OT, and this is a very high standard I try to live up to, but I read in a book called Sensory Sensitive Child that a good OT, it should never look like work. It should always look like play, which that's hard to do.
See, that's one thing we're, I mean, I've told all the therapists, if you make it like a game with him, he'll get more up and he'll decide to join you in it, and he'll think it's more fun. But they want to do it their way, and it's like, this way isn't working because you see what it's getting.
Change OT.
Well, and that's what I mean, and I've been here long enough. I will tell the story that, you know, I had a patient once named David who was a difficult patient. And he and I got along okay, nothing special. And I had a student come through, Adrian, and the two of them just clicked like best buds. And he and I weren't having any problems, but here my student comes along and does a better job with my patient than I was doing. And I go, you know what, that just let me take a deep breath and go, you know what, some personalities don't, and I didn't dislike this child, I liked this child, I had no problem with them, but he and I didn't have that special bond. I mean, you know, you get a special, there are teachers you've had in your life that you've had that special bond with. And as my student came along, because again, he was one of those screaming kids, and those screaming kids tend to be the kids that when they stop screaming, because they will always have a place in their heart. Again, I know exactly where David is right now, and he's fabulous. But it may be someone that he's just not clicked with, and it may take a couple therapists, and it's taken me a couple times with a mom saying, you know what, I think we've plateaued with Miss Melissa. I want to switch therapists, and I've had to be a big enough person to say, you know what, let's try it. You know, let's do what's best for this kid, and let's try a different therapist, even in the same clinic, different clinic, whatever. I'm not saying your therapist is bad by any means.
No, yeah.
But sometimes, you know, like I am obsessed with dinosaurs, so I can get a lot of kids to do stuff who love dinosaurs, because I'm like, yeah, well, what's the difference between a Giganotosaurus and an Allosaurus? You know, we sit there and we have conversations like that. But other therapists know a lot about, say, hunting or, say, Bob the Builder and construction stuff that I don't know about. You just naturally click with people you have more interests with.
Right.
And so maybe she just hasn't found his carrot yet to dangle. And maybe someone else, they would share a certain interest in something that there would be more of a carrot.
Well, say I even spoke with them about maybe changing therapists, and they was like, well, you're going to be on a waiting list then because we're just full up. And it's
Well, and that is a problem. I mean, I would probably say the same
Well, I
thing to
think
you.
not having get that therapy and wait, you know, because right now, like I said, he's moved to the stage where he just doesn't want to do anything unless it's his choice of doing it.
And we have had patients in the clinic that the mom has told us, look, I think you're all wonderful, but he does best with change. The only autistic kid I've ever seen that does best with change. And so the more different therapists we gave him, so any student that came through, we gave this kid, because he would have like a 2 or 3 month honeymoon period with anybody. And so if we kept doing honeymoon period, well, he tested out of therapy and is in a regular kindergarten class now. But that last year before kindergarten, he probably had, I saw him, Luke saw him, he had 2 different students. That's at least 4 therapists he had in his year before kindergarten. And mom was like, yes, please, anytime y'all want to change his time was the same, but anytime he wants to see a different therapist, please, because he liked different therapists. So, and she was fine with, and that made it easy for us. We have a lot of students come through. We're like, okay, Johnny's always going on the student schedule because he did well with that. Sorry, I couldn't get real.
Well, they're fine.
Training. I've been doing this long enough that I don't hesitate to go, I don't know about that one. Let me give you a few tricks, but I'm not saying I have any answers for that one. Okay, so here are my favorite websites. PDPpro.com has the best selection of various sensory toys. It's done by a couple OTs. And I found this great therapy necklace there that I would have brought, that one's in my son's backpack and one's in my daughter's backpack. But they have the best mouth chews. Okay, so you all have all seen, I'm assuming most people who've worked with sensory have seen those telephone cord looking sensory necklaces. I know from experience those like to be shot across the room, and those become more of a fidget toy, more of a distraction than an actual help. So at pdppro.com, they have these called Sensachews, Sensachews, and it's a really hard to navigate website. They must have had someone like me set it up because it's hard to navigate, even when you type that in. So you just search and search and search, and it'll come up. But they have these like big rubber, wonderfully chewy medallions on these lanyards with the breakaway. So even my daughter's grandma, my mom, who's a nurse, who was terrified that I would give my daughter a necklace to help reduce her biting, it has the breakaway. And kids wear weird necklaces, so it's just a string, and they come in different colors, they come in camo, and you can pick your color, and it has this big, wonderful, chewy thing on there. Just a couple weeks ago, I ordered it from pdppro.com because I'd never found anything I liked on Amazon, and I was like, well, what if I just type in actual